Right. Here we go, Danny. Good morning, aloha,
Good
and
morning.
aloha to all that are watching this now or in the future. Uh, Danny Gardner, the East Hawaii chapter rep for HIAMFT and administrative guru emerging. And John Souza here, president of HIAMFT. We are here to just talk story about some associate level licensing stuff, and anything else that might come up in the next 15 to 30 minutes here. We'll see how it goes. Um, I Danny and I were just talking before we started recording here, and there was some stuff that I said, "Oh, Danny, hold on to that because that's some good energy stuff, particularly around leadership." And it resonated with me, and I wanted you to hold on to it for this because I think it's what we all need to be thinking about during these times, which are becoming increasingly tumultuous and um, ever changing. I mean, things are always ever changing, but it seems like things are becoming a bit more polarized. And so, would you mind just briefly recapping what you just said about your own emerging thing that you're doing?
Um, yeah, I was in the business world for so long and I worked under all these rules and regulations. So I didn't really have, I mean, as an auditor, you only can do what you can do. So I did that for many, many years. So I didn't have the opportunity to expand my personal horizons or come up with different ideas. We just took the best practices and that's what we used. So when I decided to become a therapist, actually a year ago, it just opened up a whole new world for me. It helped me see there were a lot of resources lacking when it came to information. I had to do a lot of research on my own as far as what type of, I don't want to say what type of psychology, but what area do you want to focus on? What schooling, what license, all these things were different and I didn't know that. And
Hmm.
I'm learning as I go along. And as part of my, joy and my journey, I fell in love with MFT because it suits my brain, the systemic thinking, what the MRI group did and how they worked and how they thought and how they theorized everything. It was just incredible because it was consistent. And when everybody asked, what are you going to be doing? I'm like, it's therapy, but it's a different way of looking at the problem and it removes pathology. You're not the problem. And that excited me. It woke something up. So the more I share with people, the more they're like, I had no idea that that existed. I had no idea the differences in the areas of psychology. So I wanted to put something together and post it on the website, as a way, if people are just curious, that they can read about it and they can understand the real differences between this group and psychologists and, social workers, whatever. We just like expand off each other, but we just think differently. So it was really exciting for
Yeah.
me to discover that personally.
And I'm so grateful you shared that story because I think, well, one, just the level of authenticity that you bring when in this sharing. I mean, I can just feel the sort of energy uh, bubbling up to the surface as you
Yeah.
start to step into this awareness of, wow, there are all these possibilities and all of the things that you're bringing to this field as a therapist that you didn't even know you're going to be able to use as a therapist.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very exciting for me because it's completely different. When you come from accounting, which is very black and white,
Right.
and then you go into therapy, which is like a kaleidoscope of all these different colors and, shades, you discover a whole different world
Mhm.
and that the meaning behind the different fields is just so different. So I'm extremely excited. That's why I I wanted to get involved with HIAMFT because I wanted to branch out and meet people, which is something that I haven't done in the past. I lived in a very, believe it or not, very reclusive world, and I just didn't reach out to people. Um, and I'm doing that, as part of my growth, as part of my journey, and as part of this whole process. I'm taking on a leadership role, which is completely different than the leadership roles I've taken.
Mm.
There's difference between leading an audit versus seeing things through a systemic lens and saying, okay, maybe somebody's missing this or somebody's missing that. And I just want to bring it, share it. And I don't know how to do it, but it's going to happen.
I love that. Yeah, that that just resonates with me. This leadership role that's emerging for you in this process, and I know as somebody who is also trying to lead from that systemic orientation, one of the um, challenges right now is how do we maintain identity as MFTs. And like you said, there are some tenets that we adhere to, uh, at least ideologically, such as non pathology. However, it's really tough to maintain that in a system that requires literally the pathologizing in order to get paid for services. In order to bill an insurance company, for example, I have to diagnose somebody. And the bittersweet news is that MFTs tend to be really good at using diagnostic labels. The downside is it's not necessarily part of our lens of the world.
But maybe we can change that.
Mm,
Laws change all the time. And we are not like psychologists. We're not like social workers. We're all in the same field, but the way that we're trained to think, the way that we are trained to work is different. We become part of our client's system, whether it's intentional or inadvertent. We become part of their systemic family. And I think that's the difference between the different professions.
mm,
Um, I know it's a lot harder for people who don't fully understand it to think about that, but most MFTs that I know, it's just a natural thing. We become part of their fabric,
mm, mm.
and it doesn't phase us. It doesn't dilute the fact that we are a profession with boundaries.
Right.
It's just different the way we interact with them, and I find it so fascinating that we're able to maintain our identity as professionals, but also become part of the lives of our clients and make such a big difference to them.
Yeah,
So it is different.
it's different, and it's similar. And I'm thinking of the work of Sue and Sue, who wrote. I'm looking at my bookshelf here. Who wrote the book Counseling the Culturally Diverse. It's a textbook that I used to use in a cultural diversity class. And they talk about the similarities, the differences, and the uniquenesses of any given culture. Um, and so, for those that are not in the field, the mental health field, it would seem that there is no difference between a psychologist, a social worker, a marriage and family therapist, a mental health counselor, professional counselor. They're all mental health professionals, right? They're all therapists, and that's true. And that's where we all have some similarities. We all do diagnostic assessments, treatment planning, case notes. We all hopefully agree that the therapeutic alliance is probably the most important thing to establish
Yeah.
to help therapy move forward. And then there are some differences in how we approach that field or that role of being a therapist. And then there are things that are unique to each one of those individual licenses. So I think that's where we can really shine as MFTs is because we think systemically and relationally. Uh, it is, I think, part of our orientation to the world to hold all of those differences, similarities, and uniquenesses because they're all
Yeah.
part of a much larger system.
Yeah, I mean, with each problem that I encounter, my mind automatically thinks, okay, we are one. We're
Mhm.
one long bridge. Where is it broken? Where does it need to be fixed? And that's where I hone in. And I think that's part of the systemic thinking that
Yeah.
separates the different fields. Um, there's no longer individual me or poor me with a problem. There's all these different factors that I have to look into. Is it my family? Is it my super system? Is it my community? What is dragging me down at this point?
Mm.
So that it's no longer you're the problem. It's not a people problem anymore. I don't think of it that way. Like even in terms of my personal relationship with my husband, I don't look at him as the problem. I look at my interactions. How am I responding to him?
Mm.
What is going on with his work? What is going on with his friendships or other, relationships with families? So it's completely changed the way that I view the world, how I solve the problems, and how I view the problems.
Mm.
So it's absolutely fascinating to me, and I love the field.
It is. I
It's
agree, and I'm so glad that you're in the field. I'm listening to you getting chicken skin, saying, "Oh my gosh, you got it! It's in your bones now, Danny."
Yeah,
Amazing!
it is.
Wow. And how appropriate to have you, um, really shining in this moment here as I'm realizing that tomorrow is the first day of Women's History Month. Uh,
Oh,
I mean, that's cool. I would, that's a whole other conversation that we could have, and maybe we will next,
yeah,
because I think we're going to feature Diane Gayhart next time.
yes,
And
yes.
so that could be a nice conversation to wander into.
And I would love to interact with her and talk story because I'm a student learning from her books,
Right.
from her perspective, her point of view. And I have read many textbooks, believe me. I put in a lot of time in my school, more than what I would recommend for anybody. But her books are the most amazing because it's consistent with her chapters, the way that she addresses each theory. So I always recommend her family competencies book because it's what got me through everything, and it gives me a lot more information than the resources that are provided. So I'm very excited to just let her know that because
Yeah.
if I'm seeing it, other students, in the MFT field are seeing it and feeling it as well.
Hmm. Yeah, she's got some great books, no doubt. Here's a little thing. I haven't told her this yet. Maybe I'll mention it next time, or maybe she'll watch this. But and this is going to date me a little bit here, but I was teaching family theories when her first textbook came out. And at the time, we were using the Nichols and Schwartz textbook. It was like probably in uh, edition 9 or something. It had been around forever, and it's a great book. It has a lot of good historical detail. But Diane's book came out, and it would really, I think, fit a different type of MFT student that was looking for, as she puts it in her book, the juice.
Yes,
Sort of distilled, concentrated version. Uh, and that, in order to be an effective therapist, you can get the juice, get the main nutrients, and then
hmm,
afterwards you can sort of explore what does the rest of the fruit look like and where did it come from and what's the history.
exactly. And that's why I loved it. It's like if you can remember one thing about this theory, this is it.
Mm-hmm.
And because there are so many theories and so many ways to apply it and so many different situations, you can't just, there's the encouragement where you pick a theory and you become an expert in it. I don't agree with that
Mm.
because our clients are so unique and everybody comes with their own story. Everybody comes with their own identity, their culture, their social construction of how they tell their stories. And you can't just pick a theory and say, okay, this is going to work for them. It just isn't that way. I say you pick five or six.
Mm.
and become experts in that. And that's what you use as, I guess, your main calling card until
Okay.
you find a case that challenges you. And it's always going to be that way. I don't think any therapist can say they've had easy clients, and I think it's the unique cases that teach them the most and that touch their lives and bend them in a way where they start looking at things differently, maybe from the client's point of view, from their world. So I'm absolutely fascinated. I can't wait until I start working because I'm ready. You know, I'm ready.
That's awesome. Oh my gosh, there's so much in what you said that I wanted to, just branch off on and have more conversation about. Um, yeah, but we'll wait till next week when we speak with Diane, and we'll
Yes,
we wander into some of this territory. Um, so I think what I'd love to do is if we could shift gears a little bit here,
yes,
because we do have a couple of bills going through the legislative process, and the legislature's on break right now. So
yeah.
they have a 5 day recess. I don't know what they do. They maybe go sit on the beach, go catch some waves or something, just to recuperate because
And they should.
they should. Because oh my gosh, I mean, truly, some people might say don't feel sorry for politicians, but I don't think that I would ever want that job, honestly. And I'm sure they might look at us and say, well, I'd never want your job either. But sitting in those committees, just seeing the volume of bills that they have to understand and wade through, and the amount of testimony that they have to consolidate and synthesize in order to make a decision as to whether or
Yeah.
not to pass something through. Oh, wow.
And honestly, they carry the weight of the world because they're the lawmakers. They have to make these decisions. And most of them are not as easy as, okay, let's vote yes or no.
Right,
There's a lot of ethical and moral
right.
dilemmas that come with some of these bills. When you listen to the testimony, you can't help but be touched by some of them. Like me, our bills. I'm so thrilled to be a part of it. It is so exciting for me. And one of the things that you said was that got me really excited about was Danny, the associate licensing bill is for you. And then I was like, oh my God, it is. It
Yeah.
didn't dawn on me until I realized maybe I don't have to work for free for 2 years. Why should associates like me do that when we've put in the education? I'm putting out $40,000 for school to work for free for 2 years to prove to, everybody that I'm qualified. It doesn't make sense. So the more I looked into it, the more I realized, okay, the impact is directly on me, but it didn't resonate. It didn't resonate because it was just a bill. And then
Mm-hmm.
I got involved with it and became part of the bill. And
You
then
are
it just
part of
became a passion. It's like, wow, contact your legislatures. This is absolutely important.
yeah.
People like me want to stay in Hawaii. Other people like me, other MFTs are struggling financially to pay for school, to raise their families, and to work for free, plus try to juggle a full time job.
Yeah.
It's very difficult.
It's so challenging, Danny, and I'll tell you, there are about 3 or 4 instances that come to my mind immediately,
Yeah.
some as early as last week, of people who I know are really facing the very real possibility of having to leave the islands if they
Yeah.
cannot afford this 2 to 5 year period post degree pre license. Um, I had a colleague reach out to me just last week asking me for clarification on this whole insurance billing issue. Can I bill through my supervisor, my licensed supervisor's credential uh, for my sessions that I'm doing as a pre-licensed person? And I had to say, it, generally, no, you cannot. And now she has to sit with that and figure out, so what do you do then? Do you do it under the table, which is what a lot of people do? Do you not do it and then just struggle for 2 to 5 years? Do you leave the state and decide I'm going to go try this elsewhere, and then maybe I can come back to Hawaii later? Or do you
Switch
just say,
fields.
forget it, I'm just going to leave,
Right.
and maybe I don't want to leave the field entirely, but I'm just going to bypass the whole uh, actual the licensing system, and I'm just going to call myself a life coach, or I'm going to call myself something else, so that I don't have to deal with any of this bureaucratic stuff.
Or
And the,
some end up working for nonprofits that they can't use their education and the gifts that come along with MFT, being an MFT, a true one. And they end up just suffocating through the system because they need to make a living. And I've seen that. Um, and that's why, that's part of my fear is if this law doesn't pass, what am I going to have to do? I'm going to have to eventually earn a living. So do I work for a nonprofit that tells me, okay, the funding is for this. So I have to code them for this. So I have to treat them for this. And
right.
this is what the funding allows. So it's not systemic. It's directing me how I need to be able to treat the individual and use the funds, but not use my MFT skills. So
Exactly.
that's very common of what happens with people who get this degree. And I know many that end up going into nonprofits. Granted, they love what they do, but they're not able to exercise their education and their systemic thinking. So,
So what you're saying is the quality of their pre-licensed training is subpar and doesn't really fully prepare them for the challenges, the scope of what they might encounter post licensure. Now, no one's fully prepared. That's why it's
right.
called practice. We're all in practice because we are continually learning. That's the nature
Yeah.
of developing wisdom in this field. If you're called to be a healer, you learn how to do that well over time with the given population. However, the post degree pre-licensed period is meant to be one where you are really pairing with somebody that's more experienced, who is sometimes literally showing you how to do therapy. You're maybe sitting in sessions with them, or you're doing sessions and recording them, and they review your sessions and give you feedback. That beautiful pairing or mentorship uh, only works if both people can afford to do it. And that often isn't the case outside of certain agencies that, like you said, often won't be able to bill for an MFT's practice as a therapist, but they could perhaps bill for your services as somebody facilitating a substance abuse group,
Right.
or working with prisoners in a prison environment, or doing case management, where you might be able to use some of your skills therapeutically, but you're not developing assessments and diagnostic assessments and treatment plans and all that stuff.
Correct.
So what it does is it does start to erode the quality of the independently licensed individuals over time. And then those people have to scramble either to get trained, or to find themselves maybe doing more harm than good sometimes. It's a risk. It's an unintended consequence of not having some sort of a codified licensing mechanism, a pre-independent license mechanism, which is why we are offering this dependent license or provisional license bill. And I just want to share with you this way that I was conceptualizing it. I'll share my screen here. As Danny and I are, for those watching, presenting to the Rotary Club of Hilo on Friday. And what did you call them, Danny? Your Rotarians?
My Rotarians. Yeah.
I love that term. And so this is what I was thinking of. It's a vicious cycle that we'll find ourselves in. Where currently we have a demand for mental and behavioral health services that we already can't meet because we just don't have enough quality providers. I would say we just don't have enough providers, even, let alone the quality part. Um, and so what ends up happening is those people who aren't getting services end up getting worse. They don't get better. And that requires them to use uh, other services, or maybe they end up in a hospital because they end up, suicidal ideation or increased substance abuse, and then that requires hospitalization or other sorts of interventions, and that increases the cost to both insurers and to society because there is a cost to society of having people with a mental illness. And Robert Whitaker wrote a book called Anatomy of an Epidemic several years ago, where he highlights just how significant that cost is by way of disability claims, which have increased dramatically over this latter half of the 20th century, um, and disability claims based on a mental health diagnosis. But those costs that go to insurers and society end up getting passed either to the consumers via taxes or to premiums or through the premiums, uh, or they'll start paying us less, us providers less, which then can start to erode the field of mental health providers. And again, now you have not enough quality providers. You don't have enough people training the new providers, yet the demand for mental health services remains the same and actually increases now because you end up having fewer providers. And it goes around and around and around. And the reason I wanted to share this is because there were two in our last hearing on the bill for SB 2829, which is our associate level licensing bill. There were two main opponents. One was DCCA, who cited a particular statute that says licensing bills should only be created in order to protect the public welfare. And when I look at this vicious cycle, I can't think of anything more public welfare than this cycle.
I mean, all I wanted to say to DCCA was you're absolutely right. And that's why we are pushing for this bill to support your claims.
100%, Danny. Exactly. And the other opposition was from the Hawaii Psychiatric Medical Association. And I couldn't have agreed with their statement more when they said something to the effect of they thought that these statutes, or no, they said the licensure laws are created for a reason, which is to protect the public. And I said I couldn't agree more. I think that's exactly right. And that's why we're saying we need to create this associate level licensing so that we can better protect the public.
Yeah, their oppositions, it's hard to disagree with because we see it from a different point of view. It is not a problem. It is an issue that we're making an attempt to resolve. We are trying to protect the public. There is nothing, when I see the word quality, okay, it's almost offensive from my point of view as an associate. I'm going through school. I'm getting educated. And if there's a supervisor overseeing my work, we are putting the systems into place to make sure that there is high quality. There are regulatory agencies like DCCA that oversee us, and there's HIAMFT. You know, um, we're we're not doing anything unique, and we're not doing anything outside of the scope that would threaten the public. We have everything in place legally and ethically and morally to support this. So when it comes to looking at associates as providing lesser of a quality, I think there is a there's something missing. Like they're not realizing all these other things are into place already. They're not looking at the whole picture. They're not looking at it systemically, the way that I look at it. So when people say there's a problem, show me. Show me and tell me where it is so that I can see if I can help you fix it. Do you understand from my point of view? So it was very difficult when I heard some testimonies. It's like, really, I don't see the problem.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. So that's exactly why everyone that's watching this, if you really want to protect the public and help us improve our effectiveness as mental health providers, it is imperative that you continue to submit testimony on this bill in support of this bill. SB 2829 is the bill. And to give us a slightly different perspective on this, or maybe a similar one, I don't know because I haven't watched the video in full yet, I'd like to invite via a pre-recorded video an LMFT here in Hawaii who owns a rather large and robust group private practice, Britt Young. And actually, Britt is responsible for coming up with an initial draft of the associate level licensing bill. She was working with another senator, sort of parallel to our work with our lobbyist. And then she contacted us and we merged our efforts to create this grand bill that now involves the psychologists, the social workers, the LMFTs, and the licensed mental health counselors. So let's go ahead and just, it's a 3.5 minute video. Let's see what Britt has to say about this issue.
Hi, my name is Britt Young, and I am a licensed marriage and family therapist and the founder of Explore Counseling and director there as well. And I just wanted to tape a short video to show my support for the associate licensure bill. Just on a personal note, when I started my journey as an MFT, I was looking for a place to get my hours, and I found a place in Georgia that focused on the foster care system and play therapy. And I thought, okay, I've sort of always wanted to try out play therapy. I didn't know I wanted to do it long term, but I certainly wanted to try it out. And once I got in that agency, it was really lovely. I got a lot of support for this type of therapy, and I felt very lucky. But as I looked around, that was really one of my only options. I was paid very little. Luckily, I had another source of income. But if I didn't want to do play therapy, I didn't have many options. I could work in the world of addiction, perhaps the prisons. But really you had to take what you can get. So fast forward, I actually moved to Illinois and discovered that they had an associate licensure track. And I was like, what is that? But I was definitely excited to find out that I could take the MFT exam and submit the hours that I'd already worked, and that was going to count toward an associate licensure where I could actually work in a private practice. So what ended up happening is I got hired into a place called Urban Balance, and I was doing one-on-one therapy with the clientele that I would actually be working with long-term: couples, families, individuals. I particularly was interested in high-functioning clientele. And, without that, I just do not know what would have happened when I entered the world of my professional licensure. I would have been an excellent play therapist, but I don't think I would have had the expertise in these other areas. And I had excellent supervision, by the way. I felt like I was guided and helped the entire time, which was really important for me as well. I had excellent supervision, which meant by the time I was seeing clients, I was in really good shape. So, for me, it was a personal journey that brought me to associate licensure, and I thought, why doesn't everyone do this? Why do we take these postgrads and tell them you have 3 choices and you're going to make very little money? So many of them drop out. So many of my colleagues in my cohorts really dropped out. Many of them are in real estate now, or they're doing wellness coaching, but they're not a therapist, and they had to give up on their dream. And by the way, the tens of thousands of dollars they spent on their education. I guess for me, the main focus is, what are we training our therapists to do when they are postgrads? When you take an electrician who's an apprentice, you don't send them to a house to work on electricity when what they're going to be doing is working on buildings. They need the skills that they're learning now to be transferable to what they're going to be doing in the future. So I really do hope this bill passes. It's been it really was life-changing for me, because when I started Explore Counseling, it was based on the model of Urban Balance where I worked. So this associate licensure changed my entire life. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Wow. It makes sense. I'm like, I feel it.
And 23 other states would agree with her.
No, I know. I mean, I really encourage anybody watching to contact the legislatures. I encourage, any student um, to make this possible. It's not a unique thing. It's not brand new. It's not innovative. The laws are in place, the regulations are in place, and the supervisors are currently in place to provide and to train. It's there. We just need the laws to pass. That's it.
That's it. Enough said. Let's end it on that high note, Danny, because I just want that to be there. That's beautiful. So mahalo to everyone who watched this live or who watched this after the fact. Danni Gardner, of course, mahalo to you as always for being here and sharing your wisdom with us. Mahalo, Britt Young, for your wonderful video and story and the help that you've put into making this bill possible. Everybody, go testify. And we will see you next Monday, 10 a.m. with Diane Gayhart, Danni Gardner, and myself, of course. Until then, have a wonderful rest of your week. Ahui ho.
Aloha.
Aloha.